So the first lesson that flows from that is the idea that leadership in the most primal human setting, the first order of business is leadership. Two people, man and wife, God set up leadership. Now, leadership is an honor, but it's also a responsibility. And once you have responsibility, you have accountability. And so the first responsibility God gave was to the man, tend this garden. But there are do's and don'ts. So that's first lesson. Leadership matters because you cannot organize a social setting without leadership. I will say more about that. Second, there was a violation of leadership responsibility. So that's leadership failure. So leadership failure started first in the Garden of Eden. Leadership started first and failure started also on God. And the second lesson that failure came with consequences. It's important that leaders understand that leadership is a sacred responsibility. When we vote for people, what we declare by our vote is that we authorize them to act on our behalf. So it's a vicarious responsibility. We have granted a power of attorney that this person is my chosen delegate, agent, trustee, to hold for me our collective responsibility and to act as if I'm the one acting. And that's why in political theory about the origin of the state, from even the 18th century, they borrowed from Christian theologians who spoke about what they call representation. None of them are Christians. They said Jesus became a man. God became a man. Is that not correct? Yes. And then he now stood as our representative. So the reason why some of us claim that we are saved because somebody died is that that person is our type who now represents us. So his actions are attributed to us vicariously. That is how we build a notion of representative democracy, which is the idea that because the society has expanded beyond the Greek stage of one man, one vote. In our villages, some of us came from the southeast, even the south, in fact, the whole southern area, you have village democracy, is that correct? Everyone can gather at the square. All adults, men at least, in those villages, and make decisions themselves. But when they expanded beyond maybe a jail or equivalent to the whole of rivers, then delegates come from Borno, from the other side, from Opobo, from Ogoni, from Ikwere, from Echela, everybody. Then we elect representatives. What they discuss there becomes what we discuss. That's the idea of leadership. So the issue that once leadership fails, it's not the leader who suffers alone. That's a collective consequence. And that was well shown in that first fight, the Garden of Eden story. That when leadership fails, everybody suffers. So, throughout history, there has been serious debate about who actually makes history. People argue, are we not exhilarating the power of leadership? Who is a leader, by the way? Do we need leaders? Aren't we all adults? Some people have argued that what makes history is a strong man. We have the strong man theory, led by historians like Thomas Carlyle, who wrote a book on heroes, hero worship, and the heroic in history. And it's actually very simple. That history is made by the strong man. The strong man bends, event, everything to his will. Whether it's Napoleon Bonaparte, whether it's all the dictators, Hitler, the Buccaneers, these are strong men. The context, situation makes history. They say, for example, without a world war, there will be no church here. Church became church because Britain was in the war. Is that also? But after the war, he lost the election. So which means that every context creates the appropriate person to lead. In time of war, there's a leader fit for purpose. In time of peace, there's a leader fit for purpose. In time of construction and reconstruction, there's a leader fit for purpose. So not all people can lead at the same time. Of course, Dele, Oxford Professor of Politics, argues clear in his book called Strong Man, the myth of strong leader, the myth of strong man. It says, leadership is not only about strength. Sometimes humble people should lead, because that type requires humility. It's not all the time you need a lion, sometimes you need a lamb. When lions are scavenged and ravaged and predated, maybe you need a lamb to comfort the people, to bring them together, to console them, and to lead them in the right direction. And we have to talk about the Israelis. Institutions matter. Remember when Obama went to Ghana and said, Africans should not be looking for strong men. They should be building strong institutions. The last Nobel Prize was given to 3 scholars, 2 economists and 1 political scientists, Daniel Ashimon, James Robinson, Simon Johnson, for simply saying the reason why countries are poor or rich is because of the quality of their institutions. And they went to colonial rule and said the reason Africa, countries like African countries are poor is that their colonial institutions are what they call extractive institutions, institutions of extraction, renting, collecting, not institutions of inclusion and production. So instead of investing in institutions that allow wealth to spread, you invest in the one that allows godfathers to sit and plot and extract for themselves. So institutions matter. Institutions matter. But it takes leaders to create institutions. It takes leaders to change those institutions. And so, for the rest of this lecture, in a couple of more minutes, we will now look at what do leaders do. First, we say that leadership matters because leaders are visionaries. I heard the former governor talk about our current governor being a visionary. Leadership first task is to create a vision of a different nation. When God called Moses, he showed him a vision of the promised land. So when Moses was talking to the Israelites, he had to tell them somewhere. A leadership must be able to cast vision. Vision is a complex thing. I'll go into the detail. But the first work of the leadership is to create vision. Now from vision, you move to how do you achieve a vision? Leaders also are human resource managers. They pick the right people for the right task. And let me tell you something that I like. Many of us don't like Obama and Trump's government. But Trump presents the best classic case of preparing to lead. He won an election on a set of promises, whether they are stupid or rude, different matter. He carefully selected people who are part of that vision, who believe in that madness. They didn't need extra drug to be mad. The people he selected were already mad. And you can see they won the most classic case of beating the ground running. That is, as a leadership expert, I can tell you, the reason why we fail the government in Nigeria is that we have beautiful campaign promises. I'll tell you later, we don't even know what those promises entail. We just make those promises. And when we get there, we harvest our team from left, right, center. Every city from Oxford, from Boston, from Harvard, from every Zaria, we put together. Because we have no idea about how will this vision move from A to B. Who do we need for that vision? So the second job of a leader is human resource management. Selecting the team and building a common consensus. Many scholars of development argue that the reason why countries develop is that there must be 8 consensus. the leading team must have agreement on what they want to achieve. The Bible is always smart. It says, two cannot work except they agree. It is to make sure we may disagree on many other minor issues, but we should have agreement on the major issues of university development. Very important. Exactly, Rivers first. And Rivers first will make sense if we first agree on where we're going. That's why the Trump team is cohesive. Again, this is important. You can be in power and not be in control. In fact, the major nature of leadership that people are in power. Civil servants are working against you. Everyone is against you. You are in power. You won't achieve anything. And to give an example, in the first Trump with all his rhetoric, he said, I'm going to drain the swamp. He never drained anything. Because the swamp was in charge. But now, when you come and take over government, literally, then you achieve it. So we can't just say we want to change this state. We have to take over the workings of the public service, understand who does what, and you have. Very important. You know, I said I will say the truth always. That's my commitment to God. So I will tell the truth that you can't govern well without being in charge. It's public communication. Look, all management consultants, experts say you don't have to be an orator. You don't have to be the one who speaks. Communicate yourself and speak clearly. You have to communicate. Body language is communication. Your actions is communication. Your listening ear is communication. A leader must communicate with his people. A leader must make the people know where they are going, why they are going there. And that's why American presidents always have periodic press. You see how they talk, town halls. The notion of democracy and leadership is communication. Even if you don't let your shy, every leader must make. When I was made chairman, I did a lot of carrying to the news. I was like, you know why? I'm not going to go to the TV. I keep on communicating, keep on talking about what we're doing. You have to communicate to your people to build that consensus to fight those who are against you. You can't fight without building a strong army. And the lubricant for strong army is communication. Watch the new American Secretary of Defense. First day, he lands on the place, he calls the meeting of the guy, he starts up and says, our job is to fight, to report the letter. This is not the place for parade. Our job is to be brutal, fight to win. Now, that's leadership. You have to build the whole people to a. The Bible said that David made his team to become like one man. They could run through walls and smash a hill. Why? Because the king has pumped them with these drugs of optimism, of confidence, and of vision. He must learn to communicate. Even the government doesn't like to talk. Somebody should take the responsibility and continually speak to the people about the common agenda of the government. Now, the most important thing, I leave many things, but let me focus on the most important thing about legacy. There are three things I want to say about legacy. Pragmatic things. Legacy is that the vision abides. Is that correct? Legacy is transgenerational, but it has to survive. And in democracy, how many years do you have? 4. Let's leave the other one. What is assured, the mandate to help the people is 4 years. That was it. The first imperative of legacy is survival. You have to be alive those 4 years to do good. The government must survive every attack. So what they teach you, and I have the authority of Ronald Hester of Harvard School of Government. He says a book called Leadership on the Line, Surviving the Threats and Dangers of Leadership. If a leader is impeached abruptly, would that be legacy? No. If a leader is killed or destroyed, would that be legacy? No. So the first legacy building mechanism is to remain in government to deliver the service. You have to live with a sense of survival. That's number 1. Number 2, and I'll give you an example of Anambra State. Anambra. Legacy is whether you are transforming the life of the people. Look at it this way. If you look at the Nigerian budget,
anything about the people, is bogus, is for the elites. Oxfam said that Nigeria's poverty and inequality because of three factors. One, the budget does not reflect socio-economic development of ordinary people. It's good to build bridges, but it's more important to build schools and health centers. It is good to build roads, but make sure there are roads to markets and farmlands. We have to rethink our notion of human development. That is why today poverty is increasing. 153 million Nigerians are multi-dimensional poor. To break it down, it means that 153 million people or more don't have basic latrine services, basic health care, access to basic education. That's what it is. Rivers have done well in the past, but in the future, I want to know that we focus more on human development. Where we are standing in human development is very poor, considering our wealth. Let's invest in people. Schumacher, the economy, says economics as if people matter. Invest in the people. And look at the payouts for that. Professors at Harvard, Professor Land Bridget, did a research and says, what makes public finance invest in the people? What drives percentage of public finance in public welfare? And they found that one thing. They said, where the government depends on the people, the government invests more in the people. That is what rivers have today. You have a government who, by the conflicts with cabals, or whatever you call it, has investment in the people. That's why they do well. I give an example of Nnamdi. When the was attacked, and he had nowhere to go, he went to the people. The people held him, protected him, and that was one of the best periods in Anambra State. Why? He was able to convert 90% of the revenue to the people, roads, rural areas. The bad thing, there's always a good thing in adversity. The good thing this time around, that we have a government that wants the people to be their godfather. So they will be God's servant to the people. And that's a recipe for development. Loyalty is important. Godfather is not a bad thing. Let me be very clear about it. I will add up now. There's something called positive elitism. All great countries are thought of some elites coming together to conspire to develop their country, not to destroy it. Leaders can conspire, say, we want Rivers to be the best state in Nigeria. We want to make sure that every 4 years, a quality human being will be the governor, or every 8 years, the governor of Rivers State. That's our commitment. It's not bad. They are godfathers. It's important for society to have those undertakers for development. What is dangerous is when they turn to what you call predation. When you now have a few who says, we want to eat this state and pocket it, it then becomes a dangerous godfather. Gratitude should never amount to a betrayal of the sacred duty of leadership. Gratitude is important in human life, but the greatest gratitude is to God, who gave you the second opportunity to lead. When God called Adam and said, Adam, what have you done? He said, my wife, did God spare him? So if it's good to see a former governor, in fact, leadership succession means that you want to plan to hand over to someone you can vouch for their competence. That's normal. So I encourage leaders to pick subordinates, train them, mentor them, and help them to come to leadership. That's how you get intergenerational development. But when you do that, when you bring them to power, step out, allow them, and encourage them. Because why you don't hate it, every leader has to account opportunity to do. That is legacy continuity. And so I end on this note that leadership is critical. The difference between success and failure is leadership in communities. Forget states, forget countries. Look at our communities. There are some communities in River State that do better in security, is also in development. If you audit it, you see that they have what you call collection action. They have norms, they have processes and leaders who have been able to govern in the spirit of helping the people, not killing the people. There are always two forms of leadership. In Nehemiah, in the Bible, the book of Nehemiah, it's a great book about effective leadership. When he took over, he said, the previous leaders were eating up everything. He said, I did not. I led the food of the royalties. See what I've done. Before I came, they were doing this. Now, see what I'm doing. Before I came, he said, God, reward me for that. And the example of Nehemiah is an effective leader. He rebuilt Israel. He did not oppress the people. He led so well that he established glory. Why? Because he was an effective, practical leader. He went down by himself to stage the word at night. It's not imaginary. Effective leadership requires actions that are practical, that are focused on addressing a diagnosed problem. You cannot develop if you are going backwards. You cannot develop if you are not making investments in the right places. This state has enough. This is the most advantageous. In fact, apart from Lagos, this is the capital of the southern Nigeria. In recent, it has all the cosmopolitanness. Different people are here. Different ethnic groups are here. It has resources. It has oceanic resources. It has oil. It has the enterprise of people. What it needs is to incubate a 10-year leadership succession policy. Peaceful, effective, and transformational. If it does that, it's going to remain effective. And again, God has blessed us in a moment like this. When we have a leader who has two qualities, I think is important. And I come with that. Jim Collins looked at countries in the world that has evolved for 100 years. They have remained legacy. We call them legacy companies. For 100 years, more than 100 years, they are still thriving. Their owners have died. Their children have come up. They still. What's common to all of them? They have one thing common. They have leaders who have two seemingly contrasting qualities. One, humility. Now, humility is the strongest value for a leader. Humility is not moving like this. Humility is that you acknowledge that ideas can come from others. You acknowledge that people can help you to do that work. You respect other leaders and hear from them. That's the first quality. With that, you create inputs for policy change. There's nobody, no matter how smart you are, you can't be the best engineer, the best economist, the best political science. You can never be. You have to have the intelligence to recognize other intelligence and the humility to hear them help you grow the country. And the second important value, I will make a mistake. Strength is not shouting, it's not brutalizing people. Let me know this real strength. Real strength is what the man calls fairness. He said great leaders are humble to look for solutions. When they find the answer, they execute firmly. So you have a governor who is humble, but who is? That's a great position for us. Thank you very much.